in the league from an offensive standpoint, a guy that could come in and flip this series upside down, and you could make one of very few NBA Finals 3-1 comebacks and cement yourself with your third title. Probably would have won the MVP the way that he was going if he could have done that for 3 games and they win them all coming back, and really cement his legacy as a top 10 player all time in this league. So I do think that KD was probably pushing them to come back, and you sort of wonder, maybe it was like right on the edge.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the stupidest things that I heard during the broadcast was, well, he could make this, he could tweak it again, but there's nothing worse that can happen. Whenever you have an injury and you're coming back from, and you haven't played in X amount of time. So for him, it was 33 days, and you haven't played competitively, and you've had a leg injury, and you've probably been compensating for that in some way, even if you're slightly walking differently. I mean, you went to a situation when you had plantar fasciitis a few years ago.
Yep.
And you had to change your gait. You changed the way you walk. I had it. You were hurt all the time, and you put different pressure on different muscles and ligaments. And you start to wonder, how does a guy like Kevin Durant, that's in premium shape, that's never had an Achilles issue, had some foot injury early in his career, but for the most part, outside that freakish injury he had against the Wizards several years ago when he was first with Golden State, he's been relatively healthy for them.
Mm-hmm.
To go to rupturing your Achilles, trying to make a drive, it wasn't even that aggressive of a play, Eric. So that's what I think, that he was on the edge. The Warriors probably felt like, well, I mean, if he really wants to play, there's really nobody to blame at this point. And I think Bob Myers is a guy, he brought Kevin Durant in. It's a guy that he's heard, knows what he's gone through from the fact of the way fans have turned on him for jumping on a team that won 73 games. So I think that's as logical as anything that's out there.
And let me say this,
the organization felt like they just couldn't stop him.
Yeah. And I'm going to kind of pile on to exactly your point here, which is this. Let's just assume for a minute that they're not lying to us at all. Let's assume for a minute that this was a low calf strain. I still say that's completely wrong, because you had all of the stuff happen on May 8th when you had this injury to begin with, and he looked back as if someone kicked him in the heel. There was no one behind him. All of the former athletes, including people who have actually torn their Achilles before, said, this is what it feels like. But let's brush all of that under the carpet and just assume that this is some sort of a calf strain. The MRI showed it was a pulled calf or a sprained calf. Okay, fine. Let's believe that. All right. I don't, but let's believe that. I agree with what you're saying. He nurses and recuperates and goes through physical therapy for a strained calf for 30 days. And that's got to put him in a position to where even the overcompensation could lead to an Achilles injury, because the Achilles connects the heel to the calf. And the thing that kind of gets me about this is it was a ticking time bomb. We're watching this game, and as good as he looked in the first quarter, I could not take my eyes off of him every time he had the ball. And I was watching his right leg.
What about the play where Ibaka went into him and he fell over him, and you couldn't quite see him because of the front row standing up? I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah. And to your point, it's just amazing, because I'm watching the whole time. And so what sealed the deal for me, and what cemented this as sort of a conspiracy in my mind, is that Kevin Durant didn't go out with a left quad. He didn't go out with a pulled abdominal muscle. He didn't go out. He went out of the game with a catastrophic injury to the same ankle, the same spot that happened on May 8th. So I just call bull. I call total BS on the Warriors saying it was a calf strain, because I just don't believe it, Justin. It was a ticking time bomb. You're watching him play great in the first quarter, and you're wondering, okay, is this the play that something's going to happen? Is this the play that something's going to happen? And lo and behold, unfortunately, something happened, and it happened to the exact same foot. So that's what I'm saying. Don't tell me it's anything else, because he didn't go out with a bruised shoulder. He didn't go out with a left quad. He went out with something that happened to that same area. To me, that is what drives this whole conspiracy, that he wasn't ready and he should have never been out there.
Why do you think that so let's say the injury was worse, why do you think they would lie about it then? Or why do you think they wouldn't be more forthcoming with it?
I got to tell you, Justin, that's a great question, and it's a scary question, and I'll tell you why, and I'll let you react to what I say. The scary question and I should say it's a good question. What's scary is the answer. Because if we look in the mirror, and if I'm the Warriors, I'm looking at Kevin Durant and I'm saying this guy is going to be gone. If we lose this title, he's gone for sure. He's not going to pick up his player option. He's going to New York. So let's kind of slide this through. Let's kind of see if we can recover, get some physical therapy. And if we get desperate, we'll put him out there. Well, you know what? Game 5, down 3-1, you're desperate. And so all of a sudden Sunday, maybe it's, you know what, Kevin, you're probably okay. You know, all of our doctors have looked at it, reviewed it again multiple times. You're probably okay. We'll put you out there. I am worried and scared to death of the answer to this question because it might be that he was abused by his own team. They played off of his willingness for whatever reason, whether that was to appease the people that doubted him or because he wanted to play on the floor with his team or because he wanted to be the MVP of this series, no matter what that was. I'm worried that they saw that drive in Kevin Durant and abused it to try to see if they could sneak out whatever value he had before he was gone.
Wow. I did not expect that would be your answer to that. I thought it would be more of something with gamesmanship, something with this series trying to get in Toronto's head to make them think that no lead was safe. But I mean, if that would come out, that would hurt the entire Warriors franchise. That goes against everything that they've sort of stood for as a franchise.
Sports. That would hurt sports as a whole.
But even Golden State, like their medical staff is deemed at one of the top in the league. You always hear good stuff about them, or if you read a lot of stories that are out there, especially locally, some of the things that they've done. I would have probably a little bit harder time believing that, but I do think, look, again, I'll take it back to Bob Myers last night. We were watching the press conference, tweeting about it, texting about it back and forth.
He was crying, Justin.
His reaction was unlike any I've ever seen from a general manager. That far after the game, this happened 3 minutes into the second quarter. We're talking about nearly 2.5 hours after that, and he is still that shaken in front of the media where it was like he couldn't even get his words together. He was so emotional about it. So I just don't know why that is. And I wish someone would have asked the question at that point, why are you so emotional? Someone did ask him, like, why are you taking all the blame? And it was just kind of a canned, I'm responsible. I'm the president of basketball operations. So everything sort of runs through me. But why are you so emotional? Yeah, Kevin Durant, he's a great guy. And I don't think from our standpoint, I thought the people that were questioning him were just stupid, because my thought all along was there's something more serious here. And they're trying to just keep the thought of him alive. In retrospect, the Warriors would have been better to just say Durant's out for the rest of the playoffs and just let him behind the scene get ready. And then, like, all of a sudden, if he's ready for game 5 or 6, or if he's legitimately ready, then bring him back and have that surprise thing. But all they did was hold this over the rest of the team's head. Steve Kerr's having to answer questions on every single day. Curry, Thompson, Draymond, they're all answering questions every single day with all these new media members around. Because games where you have 2 days in between, the media has to fill something up. Like, they did a disservice to their whole team by just not saying he's out and then letting him behind the scenes see if he can come back. But I just thought the fact that with no minutes restriction was just the dumbest thing that I've ever seen. It's almost like a golf swing. And you're like, well, you know, I've got a pretty bad shoulder injury. I've just been doing some light chipping. And then you're like, you know what? I'm just going to go out in this tournament and I'm going to wind up 130 mile an hour drive and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And then your shoulder's laying 50 yards down the tee because you haven't stretched out and you haven't done anything. I mean, Kevin Durant goes from like, well, I'm just going to kind of go through light shoot around to like, yeah, I'm going to go play on the biggest stage out there with no minutes restriction.
And he played 12 out of the first 14 minutes. 12 out of the first 14 minutes with no basketball activity for a month.
I mean, he showed how great he was to come out with the limited time on the court that he's had and really gave them a jolt that they needed. But I thought even when he went to the bench and then they're like, they were icing it or putting heat on it, they're wrapping it up or something. And then he's like right back in. I mean, that thing had to like tighten up on him.
Yeah.
And then he comes right back out there. Why didn't they have him on a bike? Why weren't they stretching him? Then they throw him right back out there. I mean, think about when you run, just for us. and then you stop for a little bit, or you get a phone call, or the kids are doing something, then you take back off. Things are tighter, and we're not professional athletes on that stage making the cuts and the movements that they are, and coming off of a pretty serious calf injury where you've been rehabbing it twice a day for the last 33 days.
Yeah.
So just nothing made sense in this game. I hate it for KD because, like I said last week, I don't really have a dog in this fight. I just want to see the best team with the best players on the floor every single night. If I'm going to invest 3 hours, 6-7 times over the course of this NBA Finals, I just want to see the best guys out there. And watching him was just kind of like a tease of like, oh man, this series really would have been different if KD was out there for this team.
I believe it would have. I believe it would have. And I just want to say one thing, and before you get to the next topic, I want to be careful that I'm not calling Bob Meyer a liar. Because I'm not publicly calling him a liar. What I'm saying,
did you try to rhyme that?
Oh yeah, Bob Meyer's a liar. I could keep going. I can rap. No, it's, I don't want to do that. But at the same time, if we take him at his face value, what he said makes sense. He's crying a couple hours after the game. He's certainly emotional because he says Kevin Durant is a good human being. People misunderstand him. And from that aspect, if we take it at face value, I would say that crying makes sense because he feels horrible about what happened, because he understands that this is probably the next 10 to 12 months of Kevin Durant's life impacted inside and outside of basketball by what just occurred. Now, if it's partly that, but also partly guilt that's making him cry and feel this way, that's what I have a little bit of doubt in my mind as to, is there any portion of either Bob Meyer or the training staff or the medical people that gave Kevin Durant the okay that is causing Bob Meyer to feel guilt about this? Because I could understand also reacting the way he did in a press conference if he feels responsible for this. And I know he said he's responsible because he's the president of basketball operations. I mean, responsible as a human being to what might have been done to another based on the fact that you couldn't protect him from himself. I gained a ton of respect for Kevin Durant last night. Look, I've not been his biggest cheerleader. I'll sit here and tell you that he's one of the best, if not the best player in the NBA. When he's got everything going, he's impossible to defend. Okay. Everyone knows that. He is an absolute great player in the history of this league. And it sucks that this might have a major impact on obviously the next year, but what comes from that? I would never wish that on him or anybody else. So from that aspect, it's terrible. But this, I just have so many questions and so many doubts, Justin. But I did gain a lot of respect for Kevin Durant because if there was some doubt within the team, Bob Meyer and the doctors, and Kevin said, no, I'm overriding you guys. I want to play. Boy, I give him a lot of credit for putting that much risk to try to, for whatever reason. We already mentioned those 3 reasons I said earlier. Doesn't matter. Whatever the reason was, Kevin was on the floor to start the game. And I give him a lot of respect for that.
For sure. And he's taken a lot of heat for some really dumb stuff. Even when he's in the locker room and he comes out, and every time they come back at halftime or the end of the game, or he's out there with them at the beginning, well, why isn't he on the bench? Well, how do you know he's not back there getting treatment? How do you know that maybe it's completely, he just can't be on the bench at that moment because it's so hard on him to know that he could be out there making a difference in this series. And it's always the negative with Durant. Yeah. It's like, what has this guy done? We talk about some with LeBron too. And look, and lately he's brought different stuff on himself, but like, they're good guys though. It's not like they're in trouble with the law. It's not like they're out there embarrassing themselves and their franchises. These are good guys. Kevin Durant embarrassed himself with a burner account, and he was honest about it, and he finally owned up to it. Like, that's the worst thing you're going to jam him up for?
Yeah, that's what I would agree with you. In the grand scheme of things, a thing like a burner account or the thing like LeBron's decision, it's minor in the grand scheme of things if you look at their overall legacy, right?
People act like Kevin Durant was DMing 13-year-olds. Like, the guy was just responding to people that didn't like him. Get over it. So there is a faction out there that's just always been hard on him. They've kind of want to see him fail at this point. And then the same people, Eric, are on Twitter like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Raptor fans. How dare you cheer that he's injured? Like, God, you've just called the guy out for everything that he does. for the fact that he left the Thunder and went to the Warriors. Now that he doesn't want to play, he's not out on the bench. You can't make it. And now all of a sudden you want to chastise somebody else. You've been just as bad about it. So I do think there's a part of Bob Myers being around Durant that just sees he's a really good guy.